So Northampton Town won automatic promotion from League Two last season, and in some ways, I feel like their promotion was perhaps the most impressive of the four. And I mean that with no disrespect to what Richie Wellens, Steve Evans, and Paul Simpson achieved at Leyton Orient, Stevenage, and Carlisle. But I think that the hurdles that Northampton Town overcame, first of all, the psychological hurdle of missing out in extraordinary circumstances in the final day of last season, and the fact that they had a crazy injury crisis with up to 10 players injured at different points, especially in the second half of the season. I think John Brady showed incredible adaptability to get the Cobblers over the line. But this is a new level for the Cobblers. It's a level they've struggled to navigate previously. Can they do it this time around? Well, to discuss all of this and more, I'm delighted to be joined by Charles Commins from the excellent Cobblers To Me podcast, and Jake Cave, who's a football manager researcher for Northampton Town and part of the Shoe Army as well. Good afternoon, gents. How are we?
Afternoon.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Likewise, this is also available on YouTube and on Spotify. I'm covering all 72 clubs across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. Give us a subscribe if you can, because it really helps us out. And go check out the other videos once you're done with this one. Kicking off with you then, Charles. Let's just reflect on the achievement at Tranmere on the final day of last season and, what the club accomplished together.
I'm still on a high, to be honest. I mean, it's been, it feels like it happened absolutely ages ago, and I've not stopped smiling since. So, it was an accomplishment. Whereas I really appreciate your words that you said, at the start in the intro, Gab, and what you've written, since that final day. I completely appreciate it. I just want to say that I can completely also see where the Stevenage, Orient, and any other fan, sort of comes from in respect to, sort of seeing this as the most impressive promotion out of the four that happened, obviously, in League Two. I do get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I suppose is the trouble that you've had is getting people to understand where you're coming from in terms of our injury crisis. Most other fans that I've spoken to, whenever I've talked about our injury crisis, they've always gone, well, we've all had injuries, mate.
And everyone has injuries, yeah.
But I do wonder how many of those other clubs had it to the same extent. I think even Richie Wellens said himself to you, Gab, on a pitch somewhere.
That was a fun one, yeah.
The exact same thing, but look at the actual players that were out injured for us, and all of them, Johnny Maxted, would have started. So, I mean, that's where it comes from. So the achievement really is based on the fact that we had a squad that was just kept together. The camaraderie was there. The talent was there. I'm not going to, deny that at all. But I don't think we had any right to win promotion. I don't feel like we're an arrogant fan base. I know that others seem to believe that we are. I don't really see that necessarily. We looked at how things actually went, obviously the end of the season before. We've used that as motivation to keep going. We were incredibly consistent in terms of going from one season into the next. That doesn't happen an awful lot of times.
Sure.
That you get teams that miss out just about 1 year and then go and do take it one step further. I mean, really, you look at where Leyton Orient and Stevenage were the season before, where they'd finished, and arguably their turnaround was obviously a lot better than ours was. We were consistent. We improved. You could probably arguably say that we improved less than they did, because we went from finishing fourth to finishing third, whereas they went Stevenage 21st or something like that. Ridiculous.
Carlisle,
all the way
18th.
up to second.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I don't deny that whatsoever, but I actually think that makes us a better, more consistent team, a better squad, in that respect. And I don't, I'm going to get harangued for saying that, I know. But in terms of our consistency and the fact that we've kept hold of so many of those players as well, puts us in quite a big quite a good position, I think,
Mm.
for continuing on. And I'm sure we'll get into sort of signings and stuff like that, or signing, as we've only had one. But
Singular.
yeah, the fact that, you know, last season we had quite a big turnaround of players, and this season we're not. So,
Mm.
you know, I think that shows that what we did last season was good, and I think that the squad is good enough as it is to at least stand up and hold its own in League
Mm.
One. I'm not getting carried away. I just think
Sure.
we can go and carry on. The consistency is clearly there.
And it's very rare for me to give over praise to Northampton Town. So I'd just like to reiterate that I'm not a robot that's chopped up Gabriel's body and put it in the cellar. Um,
Are you sure?
I'm not a robot. No, I want to come to you then, Jake. How do you feel like the squad's shaping up in terms of as the club attacks the challenge of League One football next season? You've obviously brought in Patrick Bruh, but it's a hard one to adjust to judge how Northampton's squad is because there were so many injuries last season, and I guess a lot of it's weighted on can you avoid the injury crises this year?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the full potential of the squad yet, which is probably the most exciting thing to come out of the squad due to all the injuries that we had last season. I think injury-wise, we had at least 10 players out every single match day from, I think, January or December, something stupid like that. So, yeah, I think when you say it's probably the most impressive, I get where you're coming from because I don't think any other club had to deal with that level of injuries. I get everyone's had to deal with injuries, but
everyone's had injuries.
yeah, but I don't
I
think to that extent for 4 months of the season. But luckily, we did recruit really well the last couple of summers. Since Brady's come in, his recruitment you can't really knock. He's really bolstered the squad. Last season, when he came in for his first full season, he was saying how the squad wasn't up to par depth wise. If we'd got an injury, then we were looking at having to bring youth players in or players that weren't up to scratch. Whereas last season, I think you look at the last game of the season where we had to bring in someone like Paul Osu at left back because of injuries. He was fantastic that day at Tranmere. Without players like him, David Norman that we signed that no one had heard of a couple of months ago, he's come in, slotted straight in at centre back like he'd been playing there all season. Without players like that and the depth that we had, that promotion wouldn't have happened. So yeah, the squad is in a much better place currently, and like you say, they've been together for a season or more now, so there's that cohesion already in place. It's just adding that bit of quality, I think, now in the loan market and with a few more permanent signings to help hopefully keep us up.
Where do you think that quality needs to be added, Charles?
It's easy for me to turn around and straight away say up front, just because when your leading scorer was essentially a winger slash wing back at times.
He's not a wing back, Charles.
No, I know he's not, but but he did play there on occasion. So it's one of those where you sort of look at it and you go, I would suggest that we'd need something up front to work with Appare, especially seeing as that we lost Kieran Barry going back to I'm going to get it the wrong way around, Fulham on loan. Mark Leonard going back to Brighton in midfield. Barry had a much different style of play of sort of like a Jack Russell, almost like just hounding defenders and geeing the crowd up. A little bit of banter between him and centre backs, especially in the last few games of the season where he'd come back from his injury. So if he doesn't come back on loan, I know that there are rumours suggesting that he is about to, but we'll have to wait and see if that's true. We'll need somebody to be up there with Appare. There's also a rumour that Danny Hilton is not going to be ready for the start of the season. Again, don't know if there's any truth in that.
Yeah, just on Appare though, I'm not 100% sure that he's quite up to League One level. I feel like I think I have huge respect for his work rate and commitment, not doubting that for a moment. But I think in terms of quality for League One level, I'm just not quite sure he's there.
I think the fact is that he's improved every single minute that he's been at the club. When he came in from Scotland, he came in having always played on the left of either a front three or some sort of coming off the left wing. That's where he'd scored his couple of goals for in the SPL, and he was basically charged with playing a number 9 straight away before he was really ready. I think a little bit like how Will Hondermark came in January. He was, told, everybody was said, this isn't a player that you're going to necessarily see straight in the team. This is one that we need to get fit. It's going to be more of a season, next season that he'll actually start to be involved. And then injuries caused him to have to come into the team. I think there's still a learning process with Louis, and I think he is fantastic. His work rate is second to none. I agree that he needs to do better at times in terms of creating chances for himself, and also at times putting chances away that he gets. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were a couple of goals, and I can't remember which game. I think it might have been Doncaster. No, it might have been Colchester, where he stabbed it in from close range, a proper poacher's finish from a corner. And like minutes later, we had another corner that came in, and he just slightly mishit it, and it went wide. But he could have had a brace within a matter of moments. Then he needs to just improve that side of his game. But I feel like he is improving, and I think that's actually what the whole squad is doing. We are very much bringing in players who John Brady wants to make better for, both themselves, but for the good of the club. So obviously, while they're with the team, with Northampton, they're good for us. But then potentially as they get better, that means that other clubs are going to want to come in. They're going to want to pay money for them and bring them in. So it's for the good of the club that way in financial terms as well. So if Louis Appere continues to improve the way he has done, I don't see why he can't hold his own in League One. Going back to the injury situation from last year, I think another issue was that he played too many games. I think if he'd have had, if we'd have had a squad that was fully fit, I think he would have been rotated a lot more, and therefore would have been fresher and would have actually, I think, impressed people like yourself that don't get to see him every single game in the full context that fans of the club get to see every player that plays for them do. And I think if he'd had that opportunity, maybe to play 5 games, then come out of the team for a couple, and then go back in and have another run of 5 games, I think you would have actually really, really rated him. Whereas on the tail end of where he was tired, it showed, but it showed a lot with a lot of the players, and that's more down to the injuries. So in a way, I completely understand why you would have that opinion. I've got, I'm not going to turn around and say you're wrong. But I think that if we'd been able to manage him better, then you'd have been more impressed.
Okay. Well, listen. Hopefully, he can make the step up. Jake, you've Cobbler's been linked with Josh Umera, who scored a lot of goals at Hartlepool last season. There's talk of him moving further south. Would he possibly offer? I mean, I don't know if you've seen him with your own eyes yet, but would you be looking at someone else as an alternative option to Louis Appere, who can maybe offer someone who's a little bit quicker getting behind, or someone who can offer a bit more quality in the final third, possibly?
Yeah, I think so. I think having someone else up there with him was also an option. Could also go 2 up top. I think there's been times this season, I think, where we could have easily gone 2 up top, but we're just not had the players to do it.
Well, where do you play Hoskins, though?
Still on the wing. You could easily go 4-4-2 with him, just playing a bit further, a bit deeper, but he's still got the license to go forward and cut inside like he likes to. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if we do replace someone like Leonard, to see if we do stick with the 3 in midfield, or if he does go over 2, or even if he changes formation completely. I don't think he'd be opposed to doing that if needs be. But yeah, I think more options up front would definitely be helpful. Someone a bit quicker, I feel, would suit us a bit better. Yeah, I just feel like, I think I share the same opinion of Charles, is that his final third play lets him down at times. Just decision making at times isn't always there, but it's consistency, isn't it? That's why they're at this level, is that then they don't do the things that the top players do consistently. But also going back to the squad and players like Appere, I think it shows a lot about the character of the squad. as to players like Apare that didn't necessarily have much competition in his place, but his performance levels didn't really drop off. Could have been really easy for him just to go, well, I'm not having the best game here, but who's going to replace me? He's not done that once, and for him to
John Guthrie, sorry to kind of cut you off a little bit there, but I just had a train of thought, which was John Guthrie. Would you put him in a similar boat to him, Jake, where he's someone who John Brady came on this podcast and mentioned that at Carlisle he actually soldiered on even with an injury because there was no one else to come on from at the bench. So it's that kind of mentality that's really the base, the building blocks for what Northampton have been able to do.
It's not just them either. It's players like Sowerby, who's going to play centre half for a game, and then Sam Sherrin steps in and goes, I'm not fit, but we can't do that. That's ridiculous. Like players like that, having that mentality of I'm going to put myself forward for the team, not just sit here and get my paycheck and wait for me to be fully fit so I don't get injured again. That mentality alone has took us so far this season, and we've needed it because without it, we just don't go up. We finished probably in the playoffs again. And I think if we finished in the playoffs again after last season, I think we'd have struggled again. That's my opinion. With the injury crisis that we had and the players that we had out at the end of the season, I think we'd have struggled.
Yeah, I think it was autos on. I think who knows, but I think that's probably
that's my opinion.
Yeah, of course. Charles, is it a case of building the defence around John Guthrie once again?
Yes, I think that's fair. But I mean, to be honest with you, I think that we've got really good defenders already. I don't feel like we need to go out there and go and bring in another centre back necessarily. I think, injuries, hopefully there's been an awful lot of talk about that they've done some things differently or they're going to be doing things differently this pre-season to try and combat, the amount of injuries.
I think they have to.
The club have said quite a bit, and they've made a bit about how apparently hamstring injuries are up 21% or something like that across the EFL. It's not a just us situation. Injuries have been up. There's been suggestions that maybe the COVID break is part to play for that. Now, I'm no sports scientist. I don't know how that could be the case. I also don't know how to argue against it. So I'll take what an expert says, and as I think we all have to sometimes, is take these things at face value and not try to second guess it necessarily. I look at who we've actually got in Sam Sherring, who, again, another player that basically has come in and has been young, bit raw, and has really grown into playing in the EFL. I mean, he came from Bournemouth where he'd been mostly playing, reserve team or youth level football, to then come. We all know that when these players come and start playing in the EFL, it's a shock to the system almost. It matters more getting those 3 points. People are depending on that for bonuses, and et cetera, et cetera. Sherring, had a bit of a wobble around about halfway through the season, I think. There were question marks over him. But, as Jake said, when he came back, it was him and Max Dyche both basically turned around and said, we're not match fit completely, but we're putting our hands up and we're going to play. And they then did for the last, 3 or 4 games of the year, rather than having someone like Jack Sowerby, who was also carrying an injury as well, ironically, having to go in at centre-back. So with Sherring, you've got Ake Odemeo, who, again, had his injury problems last term. Max Dyche as well, who has agreed to sign on. I think that we've got the structure in place already. John Guthrie obviously is the leader. I mean, he's the captain, but he's on the pitch. You can see he's like the complete spine of that team and that leadership team. I think that we've got in place. He is obviously the person that commands the most, and we do kind of look to him for the guidance. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think it works really, really well. If we were, this is the thing, is that if we were to bring in another defender, I think it would be off the back of there being an issue with, say, Odemeo maybe not being fit. So I don't see us making a centre-back signing.
And
I think we might get one on loan for 6 months to cover McGlaw, because McGlaw's out till February. So I could see him possibly getting a short-term loan, maybe to January, just to get us through till then. But I don't think it's necessary. Touch wood. As long as we don't get all the injuries that we do last season, I think we'll be fine.
Jake, talk to me about Max Dyche, who Charles mentioned there, because I don't want to be too sort of obvious, I suppose, with the link to his father, but in a way it's kind of unavoidable, because when I listen to Sean Dyche speak, I can see how he might raise, one of his kids in terms of sort of stripping everything back and, no excuses. He's very, very good at sort of, I can imagine him being very good at sort of schooling his kids with the right sort of mentality and fitting into the culture that John Brady wants to try and create. Has that sort of translated onto the pitch for you in terms of what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I think so. I think is you can tell that his dad's Sean Dyche, if that makes sense. He's very heart on sleeve type of guy. Not the quickest, neither was his dad. Wears his heart on his sleeve, isn't scared of a tackle, won't shy away, very much like his dad. I think he's still raw. Obviously, he's only still young, but I think if anyone's going to get the best out of him, it would be John Brady. You look at what he's done for players like Sam Hoskins when he came in. I think when Brady came in, Hoskins had, is it more than 10 or something like that in a season, or 13 or something like that? So to take him from that to getting 20 goals this season, he's done a really good job. And I think if anyone's going to get the best out of players like that, then it'll be Brady.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's come to Sam Hoskins, Charles, because it's all very well sort of sitting here now. Now Sam Hoskins has did he win League Two Player of the Year in the end? I think he did.
Yeah,
he did.
I don't know who else would have taken it.
Who else would have?
Kabajani for me.
No.
I think it's easy to sit here now and say Sam Hoskins, what a servant to Northampton Town, but I definitely remember that Sam Hoskins was actually a bit of a bone of contention among Cobblers fans, Charles, for quite a large portion of it. And I'm not just being wise after the event, I've tended to lie on the side of him being a very reliable servant, a top 7 League Two player at this level. Maybe previously you'd have had questions about him in League One, but it wasn't necessarily a uniformly held view. But in the last couple of years, there's something that John Brady's done with Sam Hoskins that he's just gone up another gear, hasn't he?
I think, as with a lot of things, you can see a very polarized view on social media, and certain viewpoints are maybe accelerated or expanded on social media that the vast majority don't necessarily feel the same way as. I think there are definitely still some fans that question Sam Hoskins being in the team. I saw, there was no questions. I don't know whether you'll agree with me here, Jake, but I think our best performance of the season was Bradford away. We absolutely ripped them to shreds. And Sam
Tactically
Hoskins
was spot on that day. Tactically, Brady got it absolutely spot on.
He was superb, and we went at them. We just attacked. It was a thing of wonder.
Turned the ball over in the final third as well, so well.
Yeah. But yeah, Sam wasn't playing then. And by the way, it's Super Sammy Hoskins. Thank you. Full time.
My girlfriend calls him Super Sammy Osa. I took her to Colchester the first game of the season last season. That was the first ever football match she's been to. And we started singing it. And she's like, what are they singing? Why are they singing Sammy Osa? I was like, Sammy Hoskins. So ever since then, it's Super Sammy Osa.
But I do think that he is... he's divided the fan base a bit. There have been fans that don't think that he contributes much or enough. I disagree and have disagreed for a number of years on that. He has always been, like you said, Gab, Mr. Reliable. I mean, the fact is that, so Chris Wilder brought him to the club, I believe. He came in as a trialist and Chris Wilder signed him. We've had 400 million managers since then, and every single one of them has picked him to start in their team.
And the East Stand's still not done.
There we go. So if we are going to look at anything and judge it, then, as fans, and I'm not saying that we don't know anything about football, although I'm not that great at it, I would trust a professional manager to know a little bit more and to know whether or not he was good enough for League One or League Two. And the fact is that he has got better and better and better every single season. He's got a contract with us that will see him here into his 9th season. So obviously he needs to have a contract extension immediately for that testimonial to happen. Then, look, he was our top goal scorer when we were last in League One. I know that wasn't a particularly great season. We were pretty shambolic. However, I would rather focus on the last however many games it was when John Brady was in charge. The difference, we were competitive, and we only went down narrowly in the end. And when you consider how poor we were,
it was like 16th in form from when John Brady took charge.
So I mean, we were dead and buried with Keith Curle in charge, and we were literally just trying not to lose, and still doing it. So the change of play and the change of direction and the change of energy that John Brady just pushed into us, that's what I'm looking forward to sort of seeing more of. I think we can hold our own, and I think Sam Hoskins is going to be obviously a vital cog in that wheel for us. Whether he will hit the heights goal scoring wise again this season, I mean, I'm not going to not back him to be our top goal scorer, but it remains to be seen. It is a higher level. The thing that I really like the thought of is that we all know that every jump up, every step up a division you go, you tend to get a little bit more time on the ball. And I think players like Louis Appere and Sam Hoskins will actually maybe suit that a little bit. As well as have that little bit more time.
Yeah, as well as the style of football being different, because I think it would have been very difficult for Sam Hoskins to have done much in League One under Keith Curle, because the style of football just wouldn't have been right for the way that he plays. And I suppose that's excitement for a lot of players. That it is a little bit more flexible, I suppose, under Brady, Jake. Which brings me on to the midfield. Mark Leonard, you might be able to get him back from Brighton, but I don't sense there's a huge amount of confidence in that from the Shoe Army. So how do you feel the midfield's coming together at the moment?
I think we do need probably another player in there to replace Leonard. I'm not too sure if we'll get him back, to be honest. I think they will send him out on loan again, but I think he could pretty easily play top end League One level from what I've seen. Maybe, I don't know, relegation scrap in the Championship would do a bit of good to, give him that experience. But I think we've got, who have we got in there? Honda Mark, McWilliams, Sowerby. Who am I missing?
Ben Fox, he'll be
Ben
back.
Fox. Oh yeah, forget about him because he's been out for so long. Yeah. So we have got players in there, but I think we sort of just need that another bit of quality in there. Really, I think Honda Mark's still very raw, still very young. Like Charles said, he probably will be the next couple of seasons that we get the best out of him. I'd have thought. Maybe someone that's ready to go now would be would benefit us coming in.
What profile of midfielder do you think you need, Charles?
I think we need a Mark Leonard-esque. I mean that. I agree with Jay. We're not going to get Leonard back. He'll go to a club that is a step up from where we are. So top end of League One, I imagine, will be all over him. But we need a player like that. I mean, when he came in at the beginning of last season, and he was essentially, and Jake will appreciate that my knowledge of football comes, apart from watching the Cobblers in England, exclusively from Football Manager. So he, in my mind, is a deep-lying playmaker who likes to just sit in front of that back 2, 3, 4, whatever you've got, and dictate, spray the ball around, make himself available. He was, there were times when it was really, really nice football where he'd be taking the ball off of John Guthrie or whoever at the back, and then playing a little triangle with somebody else to get, the 1-2, and then we'd move further up the pitch, and every so often he'd play a diagonal or something that would really set the ball rolling. But the one, I don't think we've got another player like that. You know, Jack Sowerby likes a sideways pass, as every member of his fellow squad calls him the crab. So therefore, we know what you're going to get from him. Sean McWilliams and Ben Fox are both more box-to-box midfielders, I think. Hondermark is... I wonder whether Hondermark is the answer if we don't get anybody else in. But I don't think we've seen that side of him enough. But I think that might be because of the fact that we had Mark Leonard, so therefore
maybe perhaps as an understudy, Hondermark could do a job, but maybe you'd want someone in as first choice, because when you think about it, I'm not expecting Northampton to operate, certainly with more than one natural ball playing centre back next season who's like brilliant on the ball, maybe no one who's exactly like that. So I think to have a midfielder who can just collect the ball off the defence and give the team some oxygen and have make sure that you have your spells of possession. I think against the top sides, that's going to be really, really important that you've got someone who can do that job.
Yeah, and the thing that we're going to have to admit that we will struggle with is that getting a player like that in, it will not be cheap. So therefore, we will have to go down the route that we did last season with it, which is to rely on, a loan from, a Premier League team.
It's the only way of getting affordable quality, I think.
Exactly. And especially for a club like us, we're not able to compete in the transfer market to go and get a player like that, of that kind of quality. I was quite surprised that Mark Leonard was as good as he was, to be honest, because I was a bit like, how have we done that? Why? You do look at it and think, well, surely a League One club would have been looking at him and he would have gone there. I think it's testament to the fact that John Brady does improve players. That's why people come to Northampton at the moment, is that they know they're going to learn something and become a better player.
Yeah, absolutely, and hopefully that can continue. Some interesting options now at left wing back, Jake, and or left back, because I feel like one of the motivations behind the signing of Patrick Brutt is that I think the number is 84 league games that he started in the last 2 seasons. And that sort of reliability, I think, could be really valuable to Northampton at a time where you are kind of reviewing the sports side of things, and you are trying to make sure that you get the maximum number of minutes that you can out of your squad, and not having to sort of change plans at the last minute like you did so often in the second half of last season. But you've got Patrick Brutt by the looks of things at the moment. You've got Ali Koike. You've got Harvey Lintott can play on either side, and Ryan Haynes still. Are you expecting one or two of those to be offloaded?
I think if anyone was offloaded, it'd be Haynes. I could see him going back out on loan into League Two if he did go. But I think that that trait that you mentioned there of players that have played a lot of game time in the last couple of years, I think that's going to be one of the key factors that Brady looks for in this summer. With all the injury issues that there were last year, I think he's really going to want value for money when he's in the window, getting players that are robust and can play 40 games a season. I don't think he's going to want another season like last season, or we'll start losing his hair, I think. But yeah, I think left wing back, we're not too bad. I think Koike staying for me is a bonus. I thought he was off with all the links that he had. He was linked with, I think, Aberdeen, Portsmouth, Wickham, and clubs like that. So in my mind, he'd already gone, and we were already looking for another left back, which we bought him with Bruff, and then maybe another one. So I think to have him stay and be in the squad still gives us a different variety. I think Bruff, I've not seen too much of him, but I think Koike is going to be quicker than him, a bit more mobile, can get up and down, whereas Bruff, I think, is going to be a bit more defensively sound. I think that's one criticism.
Bruff will still make good attacking runs, but it'll be more off the ball. So Bruff is quite good at arriving into the final third, for a late cutback. Whereas what you probably get more, with Koike, he's probably more capable of taking someone on individually.
He's better at going forward than he is defensively. I feel like his biggest weakness is positioning defensively. He gets caught out a fair bit, and I think some teams maybe catch on to that at times, but.
He relies on his pace, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
A lot of the time, you see him getting caught out, and then he manages to get back, but it's basically because he's quick. Now, go up a league, and players are quicker.
If
they are
everyone's
stronger.
quick, yeah.
Yeah, this is it. So, yeah, I was like Jake. I thought Koike was probably gone. So therefore, Brough coming in was going to be, that replacement. It was going to be him and Haynes, for that left-sided spot essentially. Am I right? Can Bro also slot in at left centre back if needed in a 3?
Yeah,
He
I
said
think
he could. Yeah,
he's quite a versatile left-sided player, so he could
So I
probably
think
play
that's
anywhere.
I think that's probably almost like the backup. Talking about the centre backs beforehand, I think because now you've got that as maybe a last resort, although I suppose Jack Sowerby is last resort.
Yeah, but I'd be more comfortable with Brough playing left centre back in a 3 than I would in a 4.
I think that's probably how we'd end up playing.
it's good cover for Guthrie because Guthrie's left-footed as well, so it's good cover for him if he does get injured again.
Yeah, but then you'd probably need another centre back to bring in another centre back anyway, because it might mean going from a back 4 to a back 3.
That's going to that loan market, maybe a 6-month loan whilst McGlaw's out. I feel like could be an option.
That certainly makes sense, which I suppose brings us to the right side of defence, Jake, where you've got Aaron McGowan, who had quite a long-term injury, and then you've also got Harvey Lintott, who can play there as well. How are you feeling about first of all, do you know how McGowan's shaping up in terms of, is he likely to be fit for the start of the season?
Yeah, I think he's going to be all right. I think I saw a photo of him out on the training pitch last week. I think it was him, or in the gym at least. So he's back with the squad now, so I think he'll be okay. In terms of right back, I think Lintott was probably one of the biggest surprises for me last season.
Yeah, I wasn't mad on the signing when it first happened because
no one had really heard of him. I don't think.
Yeah, so
he was a bit of an under the radar signing, and then he started playing, and he was really good. He got better on the ball. I feel like as he went on, you could tell that he wasn't really a player that had been in the team with too much possession. I feel like he's come to us, and I feel like he got better on the ball. His decision making was a bit better. He's really quick. Like you wouldn't expect him to be quick because he's got quite long legs, dangly legs. But once he gets going and puts on the jets, he's very quick, like deceivingly quick. And yeah, defensively, well, I'm struggling to find too many people that got past him one-on-one last season. I thought he was really good defensively. I thought that was one of his strongest parts of his game.
Nice. Well, that's really encouraging. Charles, Northampton have probably struggled to produce homegrown players, certainly in sort of more recent era of the club's history, and various reasons for that. Is there anyone at the moment that's coming through that's sort of caught your eye that could be worth looking at?
I think personally, I don't know whether that's fair to say.
I don't think it is fair to say.
I mean, Sean McWilliams is obviously the biggest one. He's only just 24. He's been in the first team squad for so long now. That's probably, you forget his age, I think, with that side of things. I think we've had an awful lot of players that have come through and that do get, the pro contract. There's usually 5 or 6 that definitely get the offer. The last batch that came through, like as together, you had the likes of, so there were Morgan Roberts, Jay Williams, Cameron McWilliams came through, I think, at that time, who is Sean's slightly younger brother, and Scott Pollock came through with that as well. And I think when you look at it and you go, at that point, we were in League One, they were all technically good players. And yet Keith Curl didn't want technically good. He wanted...
But they've since gone down to like National League South sort of level there, Charles.
Yeah, they have. But then name me like several clubs that have got much better that have gone through. You can say Crewe have a few, years back, but they've probably been in exactly the same boat as us the last 2 or 3 years. At the end of the day, with football, the problem is that the vast majority of the good players get hoovered up under the EPPP program.
Sure.
Now, Chuck Wamaker, who's been playing, coming off the bench for Chelsea in the Premier League last season. Now, okay, Chelsea didn't have a very good season to their standards, but he was one of ours. He was bought by Chelsea at 14. You've just got to look at how good Ivan Toney came through our youth system. I think it's incredibly unfair to say that we've not got a very good youth setup, and because I think we do, and I think that there are players that are coming through.
I suppose I'm not necessarily criticising the youth setup, but I would maybe question. I point taken on Ivan Toney. I hadn't properly factored that one in, so happy to take that one. But I would maybe say that the clubs had difficulties sometimes with the process from youth development to the actual first team. I think not having a development squad, I think obviously there's costs, and I understand that, but I does feel to me that it's something the club has struggled with. Maybe that's me being unfair, but that's a perception.
I think in an ideal world, we would be able to have either an under 21s team, or whatever you want to call it, or a reserve team. We'd be able to do that, but there aren't many that can do that because of the finances and because the pressures that are on the football clubs and the managers is to win games. Football is about winning at the end of the day, winning and money. So therefore, are you going to really risk not winning by playing a bunch of youngsters and really giving them the opportunity in the first team? The problem that you've got is that you look at it and you say to yourself, well, who would you drop to then bring through a youngster? I don't know is the answer, because you're trying to win promotion last season. Max Dyche got his chance because of injuries. People were saying, oh, we should be playing him more. And maybe they're right. Maybe he should have been getting played more. I actually think that Max Dyche would have spent most of last season out on loan had it not been for the injuries that we'd had. So we wouldn't have seen him at all, because there were, more experienced players, older players, further up the pecking order than him. Now, to his credit, he came in, he did a really good job. Like Jake said, he's still raw, he's still got a lot to learn. But, yes, there were times that he made mistakes in games last season, but his recovery was exceptional. And that's the thing, is that, with him, you've got a player that knows the game just because his dad is his dad. And if you've ever watched his dad's masterclass thing, which is incredible, then you'll realise the type of character that he's going to end up being, I think.
Sure.
But the fact is that in order to get the youngsters through, you need to have the opportunity there for them to do so. Now, I would argue that Crewe, who are the obvious example across the whole of
I'm not comparing you to Crewe standard,
no,
because they've historically been a youth-centred football.
But look at why they've been historically a youth-centred thing, is because they go up and they come down, or they have good seasons and then they don't have very good seasons. They work in a cycle of, we bring players through, we sell them, we then go back to not being very good again until the next lot come through, they're good, and we sell them again and we go back to it. There's a criticism with Northampton Town from its fan base that we are a yo-yo between League 2 and League 1. Now, that's with us paying, mid-20s who are experienced to actually go and do it. If we'd have decided last year we're just going to go with our youth players and we're not going to bring in the likes of, say, I don't know, Ben Fox, for example, there, and we're going to go with Peter Abimbola, who spent most of the last season playing for Rushden and Diamonds, I think, in whatever division they're in, then I think the fans would have actually have turned around and we wouldn't be celebrating this promotion from this season. And that's the balance that you've got to make, is that it's all well and good saying they need opportunities, and yes they do, but if you don't have the money as a football club to have a reserve league, have a team in a reserve league or an under 21s, and then what can you do to get them into the squad more than what we are currently doing, which is involving them with first team training an awful lot and making sure that they go and get experience at a lower level with some of our neighbouring non-league sides, and then bringing them back in, taking them to away games, letting them experience what it's like being a professional footballer, and then letting them have an opportunity when injuries come along, or the EFL trophy is there. At the end of the day, it does feel a little bit like things are against you in doing this kind of thing, because of the EPPP thing and because of the rules for the EFL trophy. if the rules were relaxed on the EFL Trophy that allowed you just to basically say, right, we're going to have a group stage, and it's going to be you can play the players that you want. No team is just going to play their youth team.
Sense.
Yeah, no team is going to just play their youth team because that won't benefit those younger players. They need to play with experienced older heads. But what that would allow you to do is have much more, youngsters experiencing a higher level of adult football, let's call it, in a competition that means more than the youth competition does.
That makes a lot of sense. I'll follow my sword a little bit with that one. Jake, in terms of the players that are coming through currently, anyone caught your eye?
I think Bola is probably the one that stands out. Has been closest to the first team, I feel. I think he's a central midfielder. I think he played a couple of cup games for us. Looked pretty decent, but obviously got shipped out on loan. I don't think he was that close to the first team. But I think it's good experience for him to go out on loan, experience the men's game. Hopefully, come back this season, kick on. Maybe he'll be in and around the first team again, and hopefully with a view of kicking on to the first team.
I think you've got to mention Josh Tomlinson in the conversation. Another defender. He's become our youngest ever appearance maker, our youngest ever goal scorer as well. This last season, he has just won the EFL Academy Apprentice of the Year. Was it? At the EFL Awards this season. He's got a really bright future ahead of him. I mean, look, I know that this is a massive leap, but Jude Bellingham won that award, and look at him.
Well,
he's off to Real Madrid.
Yeah,
not yet though, Jake.
No, not yet.
Absolutely, they can't afford him, I don't think. No. So, in terms of, I'm gonna go ask the two of you 2 questions now to kind of round things off. First one coming to you, Charles. What would be the reason for me to be massively behind Northampton Town kicking on from last season promotion and having a great season? Because I've got to make my 1 to 24 predictions in a few weeks. So what's your case for the Cobblers managing to haul themselves into the comfort of mid-table?
I go back to that consistency. I think that there is a lot at the moment going around with negativity that we're recording tonight for what is essentially our first podcast of this season, and there's been an awful lot of negativity around the fact that we've only got that one signing in the door so far. It's the 2nd of July, for goodness sake. That's the first thing I'll say to that. But the second thing, and the most important one, is that we've made most of our signings throughout the season by tying down our really good players to extended contracts. You know, Aaron McGarren, Mitch Pinnock. Koike's just signed again for another 2 years. We've got a really good, solid squad, and that has been consistently good for the last 2 years. Yes, it's a step up, but they all know each other. We all know that at the start of every season, what happens is that, you've got to give them time to gel. Well, this lot aren't going to need that long because most of them know each other really, really well. They're going to be on a high from having won that promotion. We know momentum plays a great big deal in these kind of things. I'm not suggesting that we're going to be at the top end of League One next season, but I am going to say that I think that it will be a fairly comfortable sort of lower mid-range of the table season. Northampton Town in my lifetime have been either battling for avoiding relegation or trying to get promotion. It feels like you can count the number of calm seasons on about 2 fingers. So I'm hoping for one of those where it is nice and easy in terms of we're not really worried about anything in particular. Don't get me wrong, I'd absolutely love it if we just carried on and we ended up in the playoffs or something ridiculous like that. It would be brilliant. But for me, I think that with the squad that we've got, with the character that is in that squad and the momentum that we've got from 2 exceptionally good years, that will see us through to something in between, let's say 12th and 17th. We'll be in that sort of bracket, I think. And I would see that as a successful season. And you know, at the end of the day, Gab, I don't expect you to get behind us. I never have done.
You know me too well, Charles. Coming to you then, Jake. Charles hopes for a comfortable mid-table season next year. What would be the reason for me to be a little bit cautious about Northampton Town and say maybe this could be a bit of a dogfight?
Probably the lack of League One quality signings so far, I'd say. But again, counter to that, it's going to be really interesting to see how we start the season, because like Charles said, all these other teams that are having to bring in like 6-7 players to their first team are all going to have to gel. We're not going to have that. So if we carry on the momentum from this season and start like a house on fire and get a bit of momentum going towards, you know, October, November, pushing on towards January, it'd be really interesting to see where we are at that point. That's obviously best case scenario. Worst case scenario is again back in another relegation scrap. But I feel like the disappointment from the fans at the minute is just due to the fact that Orient and Stevenage are strengthening, and they've got to, obviously, because they've got rid of a load of players, but they've got to strengthen. But the signings they've made on paper look pretty decent.
They've made great signings.
Yeah. And there's also the clubs that we would hope to be pushing, like Fleetwood, Burton, Bristol Rovers, all of them that you'd expect to be, well, I would think that we could be at their level. They're all making really good signings as well now, improving their squad as well. So it's, that would be my only bit of caution, was to, you know, are we going to be able to keep up with them sort of signings?
Yeah. Can I add that I think the issue is money.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing that is the issue and is the cause for concern. I'm not asking our owners to spend money that they don't have. I'm just saying that they do not have a bottomless pit like it would seem that others do. I mean, Fleetwood are a bit of a surprise, I think. You know, Jake mentioned them. I agree. I think, you know, we should be really sort of looking at trying to get to that standard and get to that level that Fleetwood are at. And yet, you know, they've just spent an absolute fortune, I imagine. On
the external investment they've had.
Danny Mayer's a great signing for them.
I mean, it's, you know, you look at it and you just go, look, we can't really compete with that. We need more
where are you? Sorry, Charles. Where are you with Calvin Thomas at the moment in the Northampton Town board?
He's, as far as I know, okay, and doing his thing. Look, I mean, this is the thing, right? Is that I'm quite I'm a business owner, so I kind of understand where, you know, certain things are coming from. I don't go out there and overspend. Otherwise, I'm putting myself in trouble. Now, the difference with a football club is that you've got thousands of people demanding that that's what you do to be successful. And if you don't have the money, the option is that you go and find that money either through, you know, loans or whatever, or getting somebody in and you sell a portion of the shares of the club or whatever to get investment in. But I don't know. I've always trusted him, and you know, I always look at and take it what he says. He's a bit of a politician at times. He doesn't always answer the question, but he's one of those people that I think has been honest with us. I don't think that he's ever turned around and lied about anything. He held his hands up. So when we went into League One, when Chris White, so I ignore what happened last time, basically, for that COVID promotion and what happened the COVID year, because A, Keith Curle just played negatively, and B, there was an awful lot of, well, what's going to happen financially in the world, not just in football at the time. So it's not that I forgive that relegation, but I just kind of ignore it. And if you do ignore that one season, then generally speaking, when we get promoted into League One, the first year we stay up. It's the second year or potentially the third year, if we get there, that we actually really struggle. And Kelvin has admitted to me that they didn't make enough of staying up in League One the season that Rob Page started and then Justin Edinburgh finished for us in charge.
No, well, we went on a big spending spree the following summer, didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
Was that when we had the Chinese investment?
We had investment come in from a Chinese company, and it destabilised the squad because suddenly we had players that were earning far more than the others. It didn't work. It didn't gel. nothing really went right for us at that point, and then the investment disappeared as well. Not all the money was forthcoming. I don't know the full facts of that. But I kind of look at it and just simply say that I think we've got enough to stay up for the first season. It's only really that COVID one that we have gone straight back down, pretty much with just a whimper. So historically, we survive for a season at least. So that's why I'm fairly content in thinking that we'll go up. There's so much going on around, off the pitch. The stand still isn't done. It's frustrating what's going on with that. At the moment, there's a judicial review into the deal that was selling.
By the way, that open stand, I remember going to Northampton in 2015, and that stand was open then. I mean, maybe it was the same longer ago. So, not that I want to pretend that any of this is easy or simple, but it's dragged on for best part of a decade now.
Yeah. 2015 was, 2014, I think it was, when the contractors down tools and stopped working on that. That's no fault of the current ownership at all. That was the previous one. They've come in. Some people say that they made a promise that they were going to finish that stand. As far as I'm concerned, they are still saying that they'll finish the stand.
They didn't put a time limit on it.
They never put a time limit
They'll be like a skeleton in 100 years. Like, we're going to finish the stand.
Yeah. It's that. There are some people that say that the only reason that they got the club is because they promised that they would be able to finish the stand over other people. We don't know, and that's the past, and that's what's, where we are now is that currently the club have agreed verbally or whatever at the moment that they will buy land that is out the back of the East Stand at Sixfields, and another company, a third party, which is basically a land development company, have challenged the decision to sell that land to the Cobblers and not to this third party. That's with a judge to make a decision as to whether or not the process was followed. So it's nothing to do with the football club. It is all to do with the council and this third party. So a judge is making the decision as to whether the council followed the correct process that the council lays out and has themselves. When we have that decision, one of two things will happen. Either the best case is that, in my mind anyway, the best case is that the actual agreement is then done, signed, sealed on paper. The Cobblers own the land, and then they can then sell it, or whatever it is that they're planning on doing to basically earn money that will allow us as a club to finish having that stand built, and to basically remove all the debt that is there under the directors' loans, and then we'll be completely debt free. And, we'll then move on from there. Or the other thing that will happen is that we'll go back to another bidding war. It just starts again. That process of selling that land just starts again. And at that point, it's just more delays. And that's, we need to see what's going to happen with that before we know what's going to happen. There are people there and I completely see their argument of, why do we need to sell this land in order to pay for the finishing of this stand? The owners apparently said that they had money ring fenced to pay for the stand to be finished. I think that was £4 million or something like that. Well, times change, and a lot has happened in the 8 or so years that those owners have owned the football club. The money has been spent on other things, like potentially, like 2 promotion winning squads and staying up in League One.
Sure.
And then the other stuff that's gone on in terms of, players aren't free, staff aren't free, gas, electric isn't free, and all this, that, and the other. So you've got to, you've got to look at it and go, at the moment, that's what they're saying. I know that others believe that the owners should just pay for the stand and just get it finished. That's fine.
Not always.
Me turning around and saying that they should do that, by the way, which I kind of feel like if they'd have just done that, we wouldn't be in this situation as such. Nobody would be, shouting at each other ridiculously online or anything like that.
There'd be other things to shout about.
But there'd be other things to shout about, and yeah, exactly. But then also, it's not my money. That is what it all comes down to, is that when you're spending other people's money, it's really easy. When it's your own money, you don't. you know,
Absolutely.
and that's what it is. So look, I would love to have the stand finished, to have the off-field issues all resolved. That would be incredible. But at the moment, we are where we are. We're in League One again. We've got an opportunity now, having kept this squad together, to go into this season really, really positively. I'm positive. Jake's positive about it as well. I don't see a Northampton Town fan that is sitting there thinking, oh, we're rubbish and we're going to go straight back down. I don't think any one of us is thinking that. Yes, we can sign more players. Yes, we can get more quality in from the league above. But what's to say that the players that we have got already here aren't League One quality? We don't know. A ball hasn't been kicked yet.
We'll have to wait and see.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to see how the Cobblers get on in League One. Gents, such a pleasure to chat Northampton with you this afternoon, I think it is. Thanks to Charles Commins from the excellent Cobblers To Me podcast. Thanks to Jake Cave. Thanks to you for watching at home. Subscribe to EFL Debate on YouTube and Spotify if you haven't already. And we'll see you again on another Summer Date Dive very soon.